Tell us how many people.
Good morning, Signature. We're here for another amazing sales meeting. Again. Did you guys see that loop of the thing that kept going around? Guess why? Why?
One more time.
Because it's Groundhog's Day. Yeah.
So
Happy Groundhog's Day.
It's Groundhog's Day, and it's the second day of celebrating Black History Month.
Yes,
February
absolutely. So they wanted me to loop the intro 3 times, and I said that's not fun.
It kind of would have been fun.
It would have
been funny if we
didn't think he could do it.
done it.
That was the
No, it wouldn't have come off the same way of what we meant to do. But
We'll do it on the replay.
yeah. So just want to remind everybody about our text line. If you got the notice for the meeting, don't forget to text SREG to 725-527-7604 so that you're up to date on all of the things that are going out. Again, for those that need it, 725-527-7604.
Somebody put it in the comments, would you, so that everybody
absolutely.
can see it. Type it in the
So
comments.
725-527-7604.
At least we know you can remember big numbers. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the real estate market. But first, we'll go to Shelly because she's going to tell us what's going on in the loan market.
Awesome. Happy Tuesday, everyone. So today I want to talk about our jumbo loans. And I want to share 3 different clients who are able to access our jumbo financing, all with less than 20% down. So our first client came in with a 10% single loan. They're putting 10% down. I think the loan amount or the sales price is $850, and they were able to put 10% down, and the interest rate is 2.99. Our second client, purchasing at $920,000, has a first loan at $548,250, which is our conforming loan limit, and then they have a home equity line of credit to cover the second, which takes them up to about $279,000, and then they're bringing in their 10% down payment, which is that $92,000. And then our third client is a 100% VA borrower purchasing at $1.5 million.
Whoa.
Now, can I say that again, just for ground?
Sure.
Yeah.
$1.5 million, and that the rate actually was pretty reasonable,
No
at
money
2.5%, 100% financing, no MI, VA loan. So,
Hey, so can I ask,
Yeah.
on the VA deal, can the buyer pay the escrow fee?
the escrow fee, they cannot. Still same thing. There's still the non-allowables that are out there. Yeah.
I think we're going to talk about that.
Not allowed.
We're gonna talk about
Remember
that
that word.
today.
Non-allowable.
Big numbers and big
Allowables.
words today, and I
Yeah.
can't keep track of it.
So I just want to let you guys know, for jumbo financing, we can take, at Prosperity Lending, we can do up to $3 million in financing. These are just 3 options for your borrowers who need to come in with less than 20% down. And if you have any questions, certainly reach out to one of us.
Very cool.
Back to you, Chris.
Back to me. So I just want to remind everyone, if you have questions, definitely put them in the chat. And you said, wait, what do you want to wait about?
No,
Why does Janet get love?
I'm
already?
reading. I know it. I've seen that too.
Because
It's
I'm
crazy.
professional.
She doesn't even say anything.
I know, she just sits there.
I can't say
Everyone's
anything.
loving
Looks like Whistler's mother.
That's why, because she
No,
doesn't.
It's like Whistler's mother.
You cannot get a word in edgewise.
3, 1, 2, 3.
Unless
yeah.
you want to be really, really rude and interrupt them right in the middle of a sentence.
do it
That's really
already?
No, I
We need
don't.
a
He does it
panel
all the
of those
time.
things that I have a question.
What's the problem? I don't see the problem.
Talk too
here.
much time.
All right, I'm done.
So,
I'll say another word.
so before we jump into the market, I think it's important to acknowledge, I want to say thank you to Janet. For the last 10 years, you've served us at the Las Vegas Board of Realtors, and this is your first month that you weren't on that board. And so she did not take copious notes of their meeting. Tom didn't either, so that's the downside of that. But Janet, thank you for your service to our industry and all you've done.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. But I'm on the MLS board.
Right.
And that penalty you'll live out for another 2 years.
That's the penalty.
Yeah. That's where past
Well, at
presidents
least
go.
we'll know we'll be up to date on all of
On
the
the
MLS
MLS.
changes.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I asked Tom, I said, what happened in the meeting? And Tom said, I don't know.
I don't know.
But Janet would have given us 3
No, what he
pages.
Yeah.
said was,
Yeah.
I'm not the president anymore. And he
Right.
said, well, you're still in the meeting. What happened? I don't know.
I am, yeah, but anything that happened when everybody else was able to watch it, right? We had an issue with MLS wanting to put on the additional rent as the rent price. So if it was $1,200 and you had $300 in additional rent for landscaping and pool maintenance and utilities, you had to add that. So now it might be $1,550 for a $1,200 rental, and that would skew everything, right? That would skew comps all over the place. So
What about pet rent? Additional pet rent.
See, that would
My pet
that
doesn't
would
even have a job.
right? Pet
How would he qualify?
Holy mackerel.
And I
Everyone
was
gets a
in the vote, but I
deposit.
totally disagree with that. You need to know exactly how much you're gonna be paying monthly.
And they do.
Yeah, but it's not spelled out that clearly.
That'll happen because we send it back to MLS to have them figure it all out.
You'll get that.
And let me just say this, please concentrate on selling real estate and not doing rentals, you don't have this problem.
No kidding.
And this meeting is not brought to us by Tom Shirt, but we'll get to that in a minute. So Janet, real quick though, going on to that point, after your time on the board, you know, would you recommend that others do it? I mean, did you enjoy it? Did you really like it? You're glad it's over?
Actually, I loved every minute of it except for the year that I was president.
With me as president-elect. Gee, thank you, Janet.
You know, Tom, I've got to say, was a true asset.
Ooh, she had it half right.
We traveled enough together that I got to know him extremely well. And, you know, he'd carry my luggage if I had back problems.
My back's never
You
been
know,
the
I
same.
fell one time in Chicago, and Wendy called Tom and said, "Come right now." And Tom flew back to where I was on the street, walked me back to my hotel to be sure I got there, and he's just really been a true gentleman and an asset.
Brownell said to be honest.
I'm always honest. The last year I was on the board, that I was president, was very challenging just because there were these little cliques on the board. I'm gonna tell you like it is. I've done it. It was wonderful. You always knew what was going on. You got to have a voice in what was happening. Now your voice may not count because you might be outvoted, but it was truly a wonderful, wonderful experience.
That's awesome.
You're
We
gonna do
thank you
appreciate
again.
you.
Yeah,
You're gonna do it
is.
again?
Can you do
I'm
it?
on the board.
Yeah, you could.
I'm on the MLS
You
board.
could.
Chris is doing it again in 2 years.
I'm gonna wait 10 years before everyone forgets about it, and then I'll go again. All right, let's jump into our topics because I've got 2 pages of notes. Just first, a reminder, our 1099s went out yesterday. And so if you checked your email, you should have seen those. So please let us know if you had any issue or you didn't get that email. But those all went out. There are a couple of studies that Realtor Magazine brought, and I thought we'd start with those. The first one was the states that had the most inbound traffic, meaning people that relocated to that state. What do you think number 1 was on the list?
Over what period of time?
Over the last year.
Okay.
Over COVID.
2020?
Yeah, 2020.
I'd say Texas or Florida.
Yeah.
I'm going
Texas
Texas.
actually didn't make either list.
Really?
Yeah.
How about
Seriously.
Florida?
Now, the first one, believe it or not, is Idaho.
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 Yeah.
Who would want
Idaho
to-
had a massive influx of new people. North Carolina, okay? Maine, I mean, it's so far
I'd
away.
go to Maine.
Gotta go to Maine.
For sure.
I'd never go to Maine.
New Hampshire, because of, isn't that where they maple syrup? New
Why would they
Hampshire?
go to New Hampshire?
No.
With all the taxes?
No, that's not Maple.
That's not, is it?
No,
Okay.
no.
Alabama, DC, so
DC.
a lot of people
Ooh.
relocated to
Huh.
DC. New Mexico, because it's always a good time in New Mexico, right? Alaska and Kentucky,
Alaska.
and wrapping up the list was actually Nevada.
Yahoo!
Yeah. Yay,
So what, we were
for the
10th?
win.
Well, we were like
Well-
7th on this list,
Yeah.
but I wanted to save it for last.
Oh,
because
got
you guys
it.
would be
So that
wondering.
wasn't the order. Got it.
So states with the biggest exodus. Who do you think number one
Everywhere
is?
else.
California.
California is on the list, but
That's way
New
down.
York was number 1.
Of course.
Yeah, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Louisiana, West Virginia, Nebraska.
Wow, Louisiana, that's not good. There's not enough people there to support
Right.
the state anyway.
Minnesota, Indiana, California, and Iowa. So those were the top 10 that lost people. Do you remember maybe it was your year as president, we had that U-Haul study that said if you rented a U-Haul here in Las Vegas to drive it to California, it was like, $1,500-$1,600. But if you rent the same U-Haul in San Francisco to drive it to Las Vegas, it's $4,000.
Yeah.
Remember that? Because there were that many
There
people.
were too many U-Hauls here.
Wow.
Yeah, too many U-Hauls here. So you brought up last week the $57 billion in unpaid rent.
Yeah. Can you believe that? $57 billion is owed to landlords across the United States for back rent.
You should be in politics because you like those B's, because $57 billion. Anyway, Moody's did a study that shows that 18% of all rents are behind an average of $5,600 at the tune of 10 million tenants
Yeah.
nationwide.
So let me ask, let me just ask your opinion. Are they all behind because they can be because of the rules, or are they behind because they really didn't have the money?
I think that you have that person that was actually affected,
Yeah.
right, where they lost their job, they're struggling to make ends meet, and they really did need the help. But, I noticed that most of those people, as a property manager, actually picked up the phone and called and said, I'm struggling, I need some help, and they're looking for, things that are out there that they can sign up for or whatever they can do. And then, I had a couple of tenants that literally, a guy showed us a bank statement with like $100,000 in it, and then 3 months later, he couldn't pay his rent.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So I'm not saying anything.
That's how he got his $100,000.
3 months into it.
Cheap
Wow.
3 months into it.
But the interesting thing is that, the CDC moratorium's until March, and there's a number of other items, and so 18% right now where we sit, and this study was probably done last month. So what do you think, it's gonna get worse before it gets better?
I think the
Yes.
moratorium is going to get extended through October.
Believe so?
Yeah.
I mean, and
Maybe
then
get some-
somebody made a good point on Facebook, and that is, what's October 1st? Well, the beginning of the holidays, and they're not going to do anything in the holidays, so it's likely to be through the entire year of 2021.
And I think believe it or not, being a conservative as I am, I think it's a good thing for this to be happening. Yes, I know there are some people taking advantage of the system.
Always.
But the alternative is that people that were really affected, because let's face it, homeowners have forbearance. Renters didn't have anything. And quite frankly, if you think of the social economics of it all, those renters are the ones whose jobs really, really were affected. I mean, bartenders, waitresses, service help
Yeah.
at the hotels and casinos. They're the ones that need the assistance. So I think it's working out well. Everybody complains about it. I get it, but I think it needs to be done for us to have some kind of
Well,
relatively good society.
Well, I think whether it needs to be done or doesn't need to be done, or what your political view is on it, whatever that is, the reality is that everybody needs to know that it's happening, and that renters have the opportunity to get help, and homeowners also have the opportunity to get help. And you're going to have to do that over this next year, because it's not going to end anytime soon.
Yeah, he makes the point that SB1, takes evictions out of place for another year anyway. So the eviction process itself.
I knew that, I just didn't know it was called SB1.
So now you know.
So, thank you.
Senate Bill 1.
The first bill out of the Senate.
Yeah. So time will tell, and I think the whole thing is, though, communication is really important. Really important. It always has been. And so if you have tenants, or you're dealing with a property with tenants in it, which we have right now, it doesn't mean they couldn't leave. It just means that they have rights that we have to be cognizant of. So keep it in mind. All right. So Tom, as you've said every meeting, the market is hot.
It's on fire.
There's
On
no
fire,
fuel.
Yes.
But there's no fuel.
So let's talk about fuel, right?
Yes.
What a better way to position yourself in 2021, knowing that inventory is going to be tight. And if you're a buyer's agent, you're probably right now pulling your hair out, having to be one of 10 or 15 offers being presented to the listing that you can find. So my suggestion is that you start
Hold on to your seat, folks.
Start focusing on finding the gold, right? And the gold is those homes that people want to sell. I made a good amount of money controlling some of the market during the REO days, and it was really, it's a huge difference being able to say, maybe you need to find another house because this one's not the right one for you, to a buyer, versus trying to sit there and grovel with somebody. And people took my nastiness as just for me to be nasty, but it was just the fact that we had a lot of property. It was a lot of offers coming in, and you needed to move through those to have your clients be happy with you. So become a listing agent in 2021. If you don't have the tools, contact one of your brokers. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to provide you that.
We got tools.
But let's, focus on that, because otherwise you're not going to be able to eat.
So let's go back to the point that you're making, though, and you're talking about controlling the inventory. And right now, inventory is so scarce that a lot of people forget that the tax record, the tax search in the MLS is that. It's a search. So I'm showing Todd houses, and he loves the 2,300 square foot model in Summerlin. And there's only one listed, and it's got 5,800 offers. And I can't get mine accepted because, he's highly qualified, and Shelley's the best lender in town, but we just can't get it accepted.
Not willing to pay $20,000.
No, he's not willing to pay $20,000 or $30,000 above list. Not that he wouldn't, but I haven't gotten in there yet. And so the whole point was I can take his same search criteria and I can put it into the tax record and actually pop up 50 other homes the builder built, and I have an active ready buyer with a loan approval that I can literally go knock on the door and say, this is my buyer. I take him with me if I need to, and he wants to buy this house.
Yeah, the real truth is you could take the offer with you.
Yes.
Like, here's the front page of the offer, and this is how serious we are about
Yeah.
this. And so, and remember that it's not just in that subdivision. I mean, the builder has built that same house in many
Multiple
subdivisions.
places,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Henderson, Summerlin, so there's lots of choices. There's also, doesn't Remine also give you the ability to kind of go in there and mine
Yep.
through that as well?
Yep.
So.
Did you just say Remine gives you the ability to mine in there?
Yes.
I love it. Yeah,
That's how they
that'll be on their
Remine.
commercial.
Just one of the tools to become a listing agent in 2021.
Well, I think the whole point is that everyone is looking in the same place, and that's the problem. And if you want to be different, find new ways to be innovative. And going into the tax record is the best way to do it. I mean, remember when you'd go to a FSBO or an expired property and say, oh, I have buyers, but did you really have any buyers? Well, now you literally have 10 of them. And so I love the idea. What other suggestions would you have?
Another thing that I did, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. Another thing that I did well successfully for a long time was go through the tax records, and you have a neighborhood you like, farm those out-of-state owners. Let
Yes.
them know how hot the market is and what's going on, and that you have a buyer. But I did that for years, and I'll tell you what, it pays off, because I sent a letter to this man in Hawaii. He called me. He said, I'm coming in, I'll meet with you. I listed his house, I sold it. That was one letter. About 9 months later, he called me back and said, okay, I have another tenant moving out of one of my properties. I'm going to dump that one. Listed it, sold it. About a year later, he called me back and said, I'm getting rid of my last rental in Las Vegas. I got 4 deals out of one letter to one out-of-town
Wow.
owner. So that works too. It takes a little work, but it takes time and it takes patience. But I'm telling you, it paid off for me for a number of years till I got lazy and quit doing it.
I spoke to an agent yesterday who went back into her database and called her. She had a buyer who was looking for a condo.
Yeah.
She went back into her database and went to a client who she had sold a condo to. It's twofold, you know, not introduced, but basically reconnected with them, and then wanted to see if they were interested in selling, and she connected the 2 dots, and now they're under contract. Yeah.
You can actually send mailers as well, and I think
Yeah.
that's the other thing we were talking about before is, you know, you send a mailer out to a group that you like one specific model or an area of town or whatever it is, and you get all these people that say, well, I might be interested. And I had an agent that basically said, oh yeah, but that's not the property my client's looking for. But they didn't realize that these are possible listings that they could sell. But keep it in mind, we're going to be talking about it in a minute, but Lunsford is doing a class here at the Southwest this coming week on how to make
Friday at 11, I believe, in the Southwest.
how to make your buyer's offer stand out. And so we'll definitely talk more about that. Anything else on that topic about how to be different and control the inventory?
Well, somebody down there at the end of the table said it. I mean, do something different than what everybody else is doing, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of always been my, how I've run my real estate business. Back in the day when it was, you had to make a decision between going the REO route or the short sale route. The short sale route was very hard because I remember when I started asking people about what is a short sale, because I'd been in the business for less than 12 months, and they were like, we don't know. Like, I have no idea. That was back in the 80s. I have no clue what that looks like. And so going the short sale route was good because I was dealing with people who were used to owning homes. And so they would do a short sale because they were in a bad situation. And down the road, it built business, where in the REO world, you're not dealing with anybody but the bank, and when the bank runs out of REOs,
You're done.
so you're done. So, right, I had it actually worked out.
You know what he's talking about.
I know very well.
Everybody went the REO route. Like, everybody I knew was doing BPOs for 8 or 12 hours every single day. Like,
Yeah.
there was talk about how to sit in your car and take your wallet out of your back pocket so your butt didn't go numb while you're driving around doing pictures of BPOs, right? And I'm like, I don't even get it. And so, yeah, do something different. Like, think of some other thing, or don't do what everybody else is doing because the competition is too stiff.
You're right. And the other thing I think is it's easy for a lot of agents when the market's hot like this and properties sell in 2 or 3 days. we see agents start to get lazy. Like they start to not deliver on the services they promise to give their client. And so I think that when you list a home and you take high quality photos and you leave that property and it's now recorded on the MLS, that's history, right? And so taking that one photo that doesn't look very good because it was easy and cheap to do, is it really providing still the best service to your client? And don't forget, people are like, well, I'm not gonna put up a sign because it sells right away. Well, no one said it had to come down right away when it's sold. I mean, you've got that marketing
Still
time.
got 30 or 40.
Yeah. So don't
Get your
skip on
name in
those.
the neighborhood.
You brought up another good point that we were going to talk about, and that's the fact that when you list a property, you have one business day to put it in the MLS, and so there's always that window. We got to be careful how we say it because there's MLS guidelines.
Yeah.
There's that window where you know about the property, and we have a ton of agents here at Signature that could utilize that listing and probably get it sold for you right away. And so we have a great Facebook page.
So if I take a listing, I should tell you?
Well,
Maybe.
Here's the thing. Here's what we want to try to do is, look, we're going to come into some lean times here in the next few months, maybe lean because there's no fuel, right? So here's the only way to duplicate or expand in the amount of business that our signature agents or family has is that when you take a listing, don't put it in the envelope, or take it like on a Thursday night so that on Friday you can have it advertised to signature agents. You got Saturday and Sunday and it doesn't have to go in the MLS until Monday.
And I think the carve out to that is that, telling me like, Todd, if you said, hey, I've got a great listing coming up in Summerlin, I don't have all the details yet. You've given me advance notice that you have a listing coming up and I have a buyer that just got beat out of 3 offers. I think that's really what we're talking about, is that we probably have a buyer sitting right here at the office that's ready to buy. Let's go to the other side. Let's talk about, even though Andrew's going to talk about it, writing an offer right now. What tips do you have as brokers to help that offer get accepted, or what would you tell agents to be cognizant of?
First one is leave no blanks on your contract.
Ooh, leave no blanks.
Janet,
Yeah, I'm serious.
no seller cares.
No, it's true. Poor written offers.
No, I totally agree. Somebody said, if I've got 8 offers in front of me and 3 of them are completely filled out and 5 of them have empty blanks, I mean, I'm selling the ones that are 3 completely filled out because as an agent, I don't want to deal with another agent that's incompetent. I don't want to deal with an agent that just doesn't do their job, right? I mean, there's too many Look, I don't have to pick the crappy agent anymore. I don't have to sell my seller the crappy agent. I can sell them the top of the notch agent. So yeah, you got to fill in every single blank.
Yeah, so
Every one of them.
Roya just said it, I was able to communicate with the other agent and write up the perfect offer because I actually asked them questions and I provided that support. V said call the agent and get details of what the seller really cares about. I think that is huge because when you're filling in those blanks and you know exactly what the seller wants, it makes the listing agent's job really easy, right, to present those facts.
Well, the really weird thing about both of those comments is you have to actually call the other agent.
Yeah.
Communicate.
So
That's hard. And it's hard.
They make us call.
and this is probably where I got a bad rap.
Not you.
When I had a bunch of listings, right? I didn't want to talk to you. I didn't care. The numbers spoke for themselves. If you left something blank, you weren't going to get anything out of it, right? If you left something that you needed a date or something that it was blank, guess what? That section was removed as far as I was concerned because it wasn't filled out. So I didn't care. What mattered to me was the numbers, what the net sheet was, and whether or not my client was going to accept the deal. So, that's why I didn't answer phone calls. And if I did answer a phone call back then, I was probably a little curt at times.
Oh, I was going to say
As
tips.
V said, that's not the only reason we didn't like you. But I think the other piece is that it's important to have all of your ducks in a row. So while we can't write love letters anymore from the client, we do have other people that can show some love. I mean, we have a great lender who's willing to call the other agent and say, this is a well-qualified buyer. I've already run their financials. This loan is going to be in good hands. We're going to communicate really well. And even you, Tom, could write a letter to the other agent explaining all of the knowledge and history that you're bringing to the table and the reasons why someone would want to work with you, right?
I don't know why.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, that's important. We used to do that all the time.
Yeah, I get a lot of information that I pass along in between parties sometimes, which clearly they may not have already communicated, but they're open to communicate to me. The listing agent, tells me how many offers are on there, what the seller's looking for, and I'm like,
Yeah, your lender is a good source of info.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the other thing too, I see a lot of offers where what is traditionally should be a buyer's closing costs when you're filling in all those prorations and stuff and who pays the CIC fees. And agents are putting seller. They may come in at list and they may have a well-qualified buyer and they may have filled everything out, but they're putting seller. And they're not really aware of who pays what costs in reality.
Yeah, that's true.
And if you want them sold, maybe your buyer could pick up some of the seller's closing costs.
And I think that, taking an assumption that the other agent actually understands the financial breakdown of the offer is a misconception. So I would point out when you move things to your side of the line, like I've seen people go to pay the transfer tax because it's the second highest fee usually the seller's going to have, and they move it to the buyer side, but they don't point it out to the other agent.
Yeah,
so the other agent doesn't really put it together.
So I think the other thing that makes your offers stand out is the communication, the email that when you send the offer over, it doesn't just say, here's an offer on your listing, and then there's an attachment. Like there's a description of the offer. Here's the list price. Here's what seller fees. By the way, we did offer to pay the transfer tax. We did offer to pay. So the communication or the email that you send over makes a big difference as well.
Yeah.
I was on one of those calls with Tom. It was no fun.
I think the other piece that you put in yours, Todd, is that people are going to start looking at contingencies differently, right? And so we were talking about that earlier. Is that 15 years ago, we were waiving due diligence periods, we were waiving appraisal guidelines, we were waiving loan contingencies. And I would strongly suggest that before anyone waives anything, they have a conversation with one of the brokers. But we are getting back to a market where contingencies could make the difference. And doing some due diligence, to your point, calling Shelley and knowing that the client has been fully approved in underwriting in some condition, that they're a really good, strong borrower, could make that difference whether their loan gets accepted or not. And so there are ways you can make that happen.
Well, go ahead.
I was on the phone yesterday with an agent as she was negotiating contract, and it was going back and forth, and the biggest thing was loan contingency. And so it started off at 21, and she's like, can we get it to 15? I'm like, well, maybe 18. I need an appraisal. And so, but at the end of the day, it eventually ended up being, I think, 18 days for appraisal at 15 and 18 days for loan contingency. But that's shortening that time frame makes it even more important that our buyers are providing all of the documentation up front, preparing for this process, especially because it's taking time, right? It's not like you get it pre-approved and they're out there into contract.
And you need a prepped buyer that's ready to go to be able to write a good contract. And if they're willing to start paying above list, if you're already willing to go above list, why do you need appraisal contingency if you know you're going to make up the difference anyway?
That's true.
Well,
get rid of it.
I think that, and V pointed out no escalation clauses. It's the division's a big no-no on that. But I think the point is that the only thing I'm risking as a buyer on my contingencies is my earnest money, right? And so if I put up $10,000 earnest money and I waive all my contingencies, I need to have my head examined. But if I put up $2,000 and I explain to my client the risk that money's now at, and I say, do you want your offer accepted on this dream home that you've always wanted? And we waive some of these contingencies, do you know that that's what you're risking? And they say, absolutely, and I get that in an email with a blood sample and everything else, and they say, yeah, I get it. But you think about that, and now that they understand the risk and they've made the decision to do it, that's a big difference.
Well, we talked about, I don't know if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, I don't know, I can't keep track of time, but we talked about on page 1, number 2, where you can do an additional deposit.
Yep.
So yeah, you can put in $2,000 and the seller might come back and say, I want 10. Well, great, we'll do 2 now and we'll do another 8. I did the math in my head, that was really, I didn't even need my fingers.
I know you were reaching. You were reaching there
I was
for a
actually
second.
using my toes under the table. We'll put the other 8 in 14 days or whatever, when the due diligence is over. And I think what you're going to start seeing, Shelley, I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but I think you're going to start seeing lenders ordering appraisals on rushes. You mentioned that earlier. And it might become like the normal for a while. You might need to tell your buyers that appraisals need to be ordered on a rush, and it's going to cost X amount of dollars more to do that, because we are going to waive the, right? We need to get the appraisal in before the due diligence is over so that we can make a decision on whether we want to get out of the due diligence. And if you've waived the due diligence, it doesn't really matter, right? It could take as long as you want to take because you're probably not going to get your money back anyway. But being okay to get rid of the money, I mean, I've had clients, recently had a client that put in $7,000 and we came up against the appraisal contingency. The appraisal wasn't in yet. And my buyer said, I don't care. I'm buying the house. I don't care what the appraisal comes in. I'm paying the difference. So it doesn't matter. I'm just going to buy the house because that's the house my wife loves. So
let's go to a different side of that conversation. So now in markets like this, you get buyers because there were 50 other offers that just did crazy stuff. And they're sitting there freaking out and maybe their agent's not communicating and they're thinking that they're going to cancel. And all of these agents just saw this under contract property and just passed by it looking for another one that's available and forgot that that's why we have showing statuses. So if it's under contract that means you could still show it and write an offer to tell that party that you want to buy the house, and you have no idea where that other buyer's at in their process or what they may be thinking. And so, it could provide another opportunity to get the home after all the other 50 offers have gone away.
Well, the truth is that gives the seller some relief, right? Now if the buyer does for some reason cancel, or that something does go sideways in the deal, they get another offer sitting
Absolutely.
there. So that's not a bad thing to do.
So let's address it from the listing agent standpoint. You're a listing agent. You just got a fantastic $300,000 listing in Summerlin. It doesn't exist. And now you have 468 offers.
1 bedroom.
What do you do as a listing agent to vet through that process with your seller?
First and foremost, treat every single one the same. What you say to one,
just like Tom
say to the other.
That's right, though. Treat them all the same.
I did. That's why I didn't talk to anybody, right?
That's why I'm saying,
Right? Because everybody wanted the inside scoop, and if
good
I
or
gave it to them,
bad, good or bad, just
Right.
like Tom did.
Yeah.
it was
everybody.
it was like so it was all getting multiple counter offer, give your highest and best, and get it into me. That's all I can tell you.
So before the REO craze, we
Yeah.
really didn't have highest and best.
No, we did not.
Right? Because we had not had things, well, I guess, Linda says, yes, we did. But I don't remember back in 04, 03, that was something we
Well, I
did on a
started
regular
back in
basis.
95,
Did
so-
you do it then in 95?
In the very beginning.
Really?
Yeah.
And so how did that process work compared to now?
The same. That process that's there now came from us doing it years and years and years
So
ago.
did you still get beat out all the time when someone said highest and best and you just come up with a fake number? I mean, how did that work?
No, you just give it your best shot. And here's the key.
I think that's a song in the 80s too.
No, but here, if you have a buyer that only wants to pay, let's say, $325 for that $300,000 house, the question I always came back and said, would you be upset if someone bought it for $325, $500? If someone paid $500 more, would you be upset?
Well, yeah, the script is if
more.
I call you tomorrow and let you know that somebody else got this house for $500 more than you do, are you going to be okay? I just don't want you to be mad at me,
Yeah.
right? And if you're not going to be mad at me because you lost out over $500
Okay.
bucks, then that's the best offer, and we'll write that up.
Otherwise, you bump them up some more.
Yeah. So
Get them to their real number.
So fear of loss. Yeah.
Fear of loss.
Fear. What's the number one driver in the world? Fear.
Fear.
Yeah.
Bottom line, right?
So now we're in this situation. I've got, let's say this property qualifies for FHA, and I've got 16 offers that are all at the same price FHA, right? And I've got 20 offers that are conventional, and I've got 13 that are cash. I mean, we're seeing this right now. And so I think the biggest thing to your point is that I go to my seller with all of the facts, and I say to the seller, here's what you could do. What do you want to do? Right? Because that's what they ask. Well, what would you do? Well, I try to get someone to pay as much for your home as possible, right? And so competing them against each other a little bit is healthy because it kind of weeds out the ones that aren't serious, right?
Yeah, I mean, look,
So the highest and best, right? Let's put out a multiple counter offer.
Your highest
Check number 4.
Yep.
Right? And then let the buyer's agent know that you checked number 4 because most of the buyer agents can't read number 4 for some reason.
Yep.
And they send you back the multiple counter without a highest and best. So
Yeah.
you got to point that. Let me go back real quick. You said something a minute ago that rang home, and that is that when a listing agent gets multiple offers, 10, 12, 14. I seen somebody on Facebook yesterday said that they got 14 offers or 11 offers in the first 2 days,
Yeah,
right? That's
yeah.
normal nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, what happens to the listing agent at that point? Most listing agents aren't very experienced in multiple offers, and so they get very confused.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways to get your buyer's offer accepted is to call that agent and explain to them why your buyer's offer is the best. Because you're going to get offers that are outlandish. I'll pay $37,000 over list price. Well, there's zero
With an
chance.
appraisal contingency.
Yeah, there's a zero chance.
You know, so they know that they
But
have
if
to
you
negotiate
call the
back
listing
down.
agent and help them understand the problems with all of the outlandish offers they have and how solid your offer is, they may go to bat for you.
One of the things that was brought up last week from an agent who's going through this for the first time is, they put the property on and within one day they had 6 offers. And they're like, well, my client kind of doesn't want to make a decision yet, but these offers are going to expire. What do I do? And I said, well, first off, you're going to call your seller up and say, hey, congratulations. I do not go on Facebook and say I sold this home in one day,
No.
because it tells everyone I really didn't have to do a lot, right? I would say something like, hey, my marketing strategy brought us 6 offers.
Well, the
Great.
first thing I think is,
Right?
well, you underpriced it. Good job.
Yeah. But I think the point was, I go back to the seller and I say, listen, we could accept an offer right now, which is your choice, and go through what we have, or we could wait 5 days if you give me a date and time. By the way, I need you to put it in writing. And we could wait until that day, and I'll tell everyone that you and I will be reviewing offers on that day when the moon hits the right point. We'll sit down at your kitchen table and look at all of them. And so most sellers will say, yeah, that sounds like a plan. And then you go back and tell everyone the same thing,
And
like you
then
said.
all those buyer agents are pissed off because.
Hey, listen, someone's going to be pissed no matter what.
But by the way, it's, in today's market, that's a normalcy, right?
Yeah.
So in your listing agreements, it should say something about offers to be presented X amount of days after property goes active on MLS. In the additional terms, that's in writing, right?
And the REO
then-
broker over here used to do that
Yeah.
because all the REO banks required a time frame
Yeah. And
that it
that's why
actually
They need a
drew.
week of marketing.
And then the real, there's a section in the MLS, it's really cool, it's called the agent to agent remarks.
Yes.
And you can
I've heard of
put
it.
in there, if the buyer agent would read it, you could put in there.
In bold.
All offers to be presented on this date at this
Sure.
time, and then everybody knows.
And there's also a status bar, if you didn't know that
Oh, at
actually.
the top.
Yeah, at the
Yeah,
top, you can
absolutely.
put in multiple offers, that too. But I think the whole point is that you're creating this playing field. Now, to Janet's point, every offer can have a different net. And so how do you effectively present 50 offers without knowing their real net? And so, yeah, that does mean that you have to get a calculator, sit
Yeah.
down, look at the costs,
do the net
map
sheet.
it all out. But I used to create a spreadsheet.
Oh, yeah.
Did you do that for the banks? Like the
When
Equator did.
they had the spreadsheet, right? I had to go through, I highlighted the numbers that I needed,
He still has that highlighter.
did those things. It's dry now.
Kind of like your presentation.
And, it went in on the sheet, and they chose what they wanted.
I used to get a spreadsheet and I put everyone in and I'd map down all of the main contingencies and tell them exactly what the net was, and I would take that with me with the offers and present it.
We were
So-
groundbreaking at the already.
So the Excel spreadsheet that
Groundbreaking.
you do is very easy, right? It has a slot for every place in the offer where somebody can write something in, every blank.
Yep.
You have a slot all the way down, and at the bottom is the net. And you fill it out, and then you give that Excel spreadsheet. I always order mine in the highest net to the lowest net just to save myself
Sure,
time.
a little bit of time. But do you know,
Super easy.
in Transaction Desk, they actually have a multiple offer net sheet,
What?
cutting edge. And you can print
Look
multiple.
what our
of them and do
association
it.
has done for our agents.
It must be the
Was
past.
that your-
It must be the past two.
Lee says I don't need a
presidents.
calculator because, there's an app for that now, which is absolutely true.
Oh.
Okay, so you're now presenting this, you got multiple offers, the seller makes a decision, they decide an offer after your highest and best, and all the other stuff happens, you get your offer accepted. Does that sound like the process?
Something like that, but you gotta tell everybody else that they got rejected.
Yes.
You gotta let everybody else
Gotta let the
know.
other people know. And so that's now an NAR guideline that was passed 2 years ago, is that you must respond to the offer that you get under the Realtor Code of Ethics.
Yep, 100% violation of the Code of Ethics if
Yeah.
you don't do it.
Anything else on that topic?
How do you do it though?
Yes, so,
How do you notify them?
Email.
I did it by email.
You do it by email? So
Yeah.
you don't have your seller sign and
No, I
reject
did it by
each
email.
offer?
Well, I have that. If they want it, they can come ask for it, but I did it by email because that was the most efficient way of doing it.
He was most efficient.
so.
It's all about efficiency.
This is a real life scenario that I went through at one point. So the seller really didn't care about price. They had a special needs child, and what they wanted was 2 weeks after close of escrow to successfully transition this child to the new home. So I wrote an offer at list. 20% down conventional, 800 credit score, ask for nothing except a home warranty. And guess what? There were 2 offers, mine lost. Because my buyer refused to allow them to stay in for 2 weeks after close of escrow.
I thought that was gonna be a happier story.
I know, I was thinking
I'm done.
that.
I'm leaving.
The listing
So,
agent and.
the listing agent had told that, buyers refused to allow that. The other agent offer was lower than mine,
Wow.
not 20% down, but they allowed the seller to stay for 2 weeks for free after close of escrow. And that's the one they took. So how do you factor that in on your little spreadsheet?
You know, it's really tough, but I have a
It's
note
called-
section at the
It's
bottom.
called notes.
Just-
Yeah, it takes some notes right at the bottom.
Monica made a point about, buyers, that's been her niche that she's worked, and I completely get that. And I think what we're talking about is the fact that, when this offer gets accepted, there's one happy buyer and 49 upset buyers. And that listing agent still has a smile, and
Let
so,
me address that.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I just want to address what Vonna had said. The question was what I did to the other buyer's agents, and I sent them an email saying that it was rejected. All offers are signed, rejected by the seller. Okay.
Hey, you notified them in writing.
Yeah, but still,
Well,
they're gonna want to see it. If they're,
I see what she's writing, I hear what you're saying, but
Yeah.
quite honestly, when you've got 47 offers, I mean, does any seller want to go and sign rejections on 47 offers?
Nobody wants to do
Nobody wants to
anything,
do
but
that.
when you present the value of why,
Right.
life's
So-
different.
So an email out that says, hey, your offer's not been accepted, and if you would like an official rejection, please let me know.
One last-
Has worked for me in the past.
One last point on this is that you as the listing agent now need to maintain in your file all of the offers that you received. And so simply upload that to your SkySlope file. It doesn't have to be in 38 tabs. It's just into the communication log
Dump
showing
it
that
in
you
there.
got them. But make sure that you're holding on to the stuff that you receive. And I think that's important. Do you know that you can go into your email and click like 60 emails at once and you can forward them to your SkySlope file?
yes.
That's how simple and
Isn't
easy
that
that
amazing?
is.
SkySlope is the bomb.
Okay.
Can I just say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Okay, not on this topic, but
Aw.
You figure you get it in right now, right?
You can see it's getting late.
Let's not just go off the
no,
agenda.
I just wanted to say to the people watching, if at times we seem distracted and the table has been moved to a different part of the room, we now can see your comments as they come up, whereas before we could
It's a
not
little
see
more
them.
obvious for me because I have to go like this.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about the CIC receipt. So I've had the question a couple of times this week. I got the CIC receipt back, so they've accepted the HOA,
What's the CIC?
Common Interest Community.
Oh, I thought.
Don't try and stop me on my own show.
You had to think.
But the whole point is
The fear.
it's only a receipt for the purpose of, we used to hand hard packets,
Yep.
and you would give something to somebody and they'd say, oh, I never got that. And so we created a document that actually said, yes, you did, and here it is, and if it doesn't go through, you're gonna give it back to me, and it's now a contract between you and the other agent, right?
Yeah.
It's just a receipt.
And let me add one thing, because my wife came home last night. She's a proper, an HOA.
It's good to know she does every night, huh?
Yep. Thank God she came home. And she had a call from an agent who needed just the one piece of the resale packet, right? They needed it updated on whatever
The minutes?
insurance or something, or lawsuits or whatever needed to be updated. And they got in an argument with my wife about, well, just go on HomeWise and order it. I don't need the whole resale pack. Did you folks know that you can order one single piece of that resale doc outside of the whole package? So, and it was a signature agent, so it was even more, my wife is really giving me the knife. So please, if you talk out to those HOA managers, please make sure it's not my wife that you're being mean to.
There's so many places
For all of
they
you
could go with
that could not get a phone back from Tom back in our early days, his wife is a property manager, and you can get to him that way if you would like.
Yes. And so the whole point of this is that all of those contingencies in the contract that we're talking about are buyer contingencies that have a date and time assessed to them. And so just because you get a CIC receipt, it doesn't mean it's over.
Well, so when is it over?
It's over when the date passes.
Yeah,
So
what's
I
the date?
accept the
That
CIC
starts the
receipt.
date.
What's
Today.
the date? What's
Today.
the date?
Tomorrow.
Today's the second.
Whatever date it happens
So if
on.
I get it on the second, when does it end?
5 days.
5 days.
So
Five
the
days.
seventh.
Seventh.
All right, that's my point.
Listen,
There is a
I don't go on your show and ask trick
It's
questions.
5 days after they receive it,
Yes.
right? Either them or their agent.
They've
So
signed
they got
for it,
5
the
days.
receipt, signed the
If
receipt.
Receive what?
If it's day number 6, it's over. You're
Yes.
good. But
What if you're approaching close of escrow and they haven't yet received it?
You can cancel if you want to.
Yeah.
Or extend?
You cannot waive your right under any contract or terms to the CIC package. You can't waive your right to a law.
the law actually says that the seller must order. Unfortunately, the law does not address delivery of the package. So there have been cases where people have closed escrows and have not yet received the resale package. Super dangerous. Please don't do it. It's not the way you should be running your business. And there's a situation where there's an investor that's bought 4 condos in the exact same
He didn't want
condo
another
complex.
package,
He, he's read it 3 times. He doesn't really need it. But when you're talking about the homeowner that's buying a home for the first time or the 5th time, you want to deliver the HOA resale package and make sure that they get it in time.
The other piece that's really important to that is that it says the seller or seller's representative. Now, in the context of that, like the walkthrough, they mean somebody else, but in that instance, you as the agent could be construed as a representative that was participating in the transaction with your client. And so the whole point of it is most people forget that CICs are recorded. And so you can get a recorded copy of the bylaws. Like if I'm starting the deal out and it's going to take an extra week to get the package and everyone knows, fine, but I could still go and get a recorded copy of something that's there, and at least my buyer would have options to make decisions. Like you said, if they were going to close early.
Yeah, so the rules and regs are recorded, right? It's the minutes from the last meeting, it's the financials, it's all the other stuff that you're
Lawsuits.
waiting
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Right, but
And-
rules and regs are
And
there.
as V said, hire TC, they'll do all that for you. I love that. We've got 2 more topics that we have to get to, so this one's pretty important.
4 minutes.
Yeah,
No,
VA
14
mandatory
minutes.
and FHA clauses as part of the loan program. So these are, talk about a little bit, Shelley, the federal guidelines that you have to have, right?
Yes, so they are, basically in there to make sure that the sales price is agreed upon and that there are no outside, the real estate cert is that there's no outside agreements, loans or anything like that. But the amendatory clause is
Cashback.
specific to the value of a home
Yeah.
and the appraisal. I hear, we went down this path a long time ago to find out, well, what happens if a seller refuses to sign it? Because a lot of lenders hold the line and say, we cannot issue a loan approval until we get the actual, or order the appraisal until we actually get the FHA or VA mandatory clause signed by the seller.
So I got to ask a question, because if you're starting the loan program and I've given you the contract, you already have the document, right? I mean, it's not like there's a brand new one that's just magically generated when it hits a certain point. That could be executed right then.
Yeah,
And it should be, because that's the buyer's protection.
correct.
So in the new RPA that will be out sometime soon, the board's approved it in November and it's still not out, but it's not our fault.
Did you hear the bus?
It's not our fault. It's after Lone Wolf lost transaction.
I still feel
desk,
the tread
things
marks
have
on my
changed.
back.
But anyway, so it will be incorporated into the residential purchase agreement whenever that new contract gets
Oh.
out.
And a caveat, we don't know, the lenders are supposed to accept it, but the
We don't know
lenders
if they will.
still may require a mandatory clause be signed by them, even though it's in the RPA. Just sign it. It's not worth the argument. Get through with the
Listen,
deal.
what's really going on in the marketplace though? I mean, quite honestly, FHA.
It's only an hour show.
VA, and the market's hot and there's no fuel. We know that. But the reality is that I would say that 95% of every VA or FHA loan that we did or deal that we were involved in 2020, we got that mandatory clause the day before closing.
Yeah.
And the
That
point
happens a lot.
is,
From the lender or?
Yeah.
from the
From the
lender
lender.
asking us to have our client sign it and us to sign it.
Because it has to be signed by everybody.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's,
Yeah.
but it's the day before closing, there's no protection there anymore.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
it's gone, right? So I think your point is as buyer's agents, if you're gonna represent your FHA and your VA buyers at the highest level possible,
Yeah.
you need to get with your lender and you need to get this signed early in the process, not late.
So we've talked about reasonable skill and care many times, and that is a huge piece of this, because if you've ever done one of these loans before, that document has to be signed. And if it's not signed, have you provided your buyer with all the protection that they should have had? And so I think the whole context, and I love that you guys put it in the contract, but it's just like the earnest money clause. It's in the contract, but title doesn't always accept it.
Yeah.
But at least all of the parties have already agreed to what's going to happen anyway. right? That's huge. What were you gonna say, Janet?
So I was gonna say, the problem with the amendatory clause is that most agents don't understand it. They just glance through it, they don't read it, and they think their VA buyer can get out for any reason because of this clause, and that the seller has to refund, be sure they get back their earnest money deposit. But that's not true. That clause only applies to the fact that the house has to appraise at least for the agreed sales price. It has nothing to do with, 2 days before escrow, I've changed my mind. No, then they don't get their money back.
Well, what if the house appraises for $5,000 less than the value, and the buyer says, I'll pay the difference?
That's fine.
It still doesn't matter. So it's like
Yeah.
this clause that's
It's there,
the
but
federal government came up with, and
it's there for protection for those that don't
but get
understand.
it signed early in the transaction,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
there is a little protection there if something was to
Yeah,
happen.
absolutely. One of the things that Janet brought up that I definitely want to cover while we still have about 10 minutes left is earnest money, and the fact that you can cancel a transaction because the parties are now not in agreement and they're past their closing time frames. And earnest money can still stay in dispute because we're not attorneys, right? We don't go to battle over EMD and put on our superhero capes. That's a legal thing. Now I've negotiated.
That's a
different
huge
story.
thing too, because it's as a broker, I deal with agents. Seems like on a daily basis who wholeheartedly believe that as a broker, I have the ability to get the buyer and the seller to agree on the EMD in their client's favor, and that just isn't the case, right? I mean, if they don't agree.
Well, that's his problem. I don't have that.
I have no problem. Like, I can't get the other party to agree to what our party
But
wants.
wait a minute. Why is it though that many times the broker, when they do step into that point, can resolve that issue?
It's personalities.
Well, no, it's that you're a step back, right?
Oh, you don't have a person.
Yeah, you don't.
Well, that's why I get it done.
These two agents have been fighting each other over this for a while.
Yeah, they're mad at you.
They're mad at each other.
It's
that
emotional.
The
Yeah.
clients are mad at them and the other people, and now you have this new person that steps in and says, "Hey, I'm just here to help.
Yeah.
Can I help communicate between the parties?" It's amazing how that works.
I'm here to help
I
my
had a
government.
situation this weekend, God, I think I just broke my chair.
Don't worry about it.
But at least I didn't fall, but Tom's here in case I do.
Yeah.
So,
Leaning the other way.
Get out of the way. Hero here. Wait a minute.
so anyway, the seller was totally mad at the agent, furious with Signature, because we weren't helping her get the EMD.
Yeah.
And she said, why won't you people give it back to me? She must have said that 3 times. And I had to explain to her, I can't give it back to you because I don't have it. And explain where her money was actually sitting and that I had no power to order it released. And that was about a 30-minute conversation.
So V makes a great point. We had a sales meeting a couple of weeks ago. I don't know, maybe it was 2 months ago with Dave, and they talked about the scope of your license when it comes to the EMD. And I think that the biggest piece of that I took from it is that communication is the value that I can do.
Right.
I can only pass information along. I can't fight the battle for it. And so I think that's a huge piece. Anything on those topics that we forgot on EMD or any of those other items?
No, just know that if you put in the cancellation instruction, wanting your EMD going to your client, and Todd, the other agent, puts a cancellation instruction with the EMD going to their client, you guys have essentially canceled the contract.
Yeah, the
You
only
just have
thing
the
you've
EMD in
agreed
dispute.
on 2 different pages.
Both of
is
you
that
canceled it, so
Yeah.
just to let you know.
And just so that you know, some escrow companies, not all, but some will take those 2 documents and go, it's canceled,
Yep.
and they'll cancel the escrow, which if you represent the buy side, that gives the listing side the ability to relist the property,
Yep.
put it back on the market for sale. And so if you think you have the leverage of holding up them selling their home, you don't have that.
Yeah.
Right? It's the EMD is going to sit there and dispute for 7 years.
So what you just said is really important, though, from an MLS standpoint, is that once the buyer has not performed and passed the close date, or they've noticed us a cancellation, we can then go ahead and put the property back in available.
Yeah.
Which that changed about 4 years ago. I can go put it back in available, subject to cancellation of current escrow, because you want to make sure
Right.
that nothing happens that
That's the
messes up your new deal.
keywords.
But they can't hold a seller hostage anymore to be unable to market their property.
The only way to do that, I mean, if your buyer is absolutely not going to settle and they want to try to hold up the seller, the only way to do that is to file a lawsuit against the property.
Yeah.
And that costs a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Usually that costs more than what the EMD amount is, and so that just doesn't make sense. So if you're thinking, I'll just hold up the seller as long as I can,
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way.
And here's what I hear all the time on the agents the other side is they threaten the word lawsuit a lot. Obviously, when they use the word lawsuit, they've never been through one.
Never done that.
Because they don't understand
No clue.
how
The cost.
Serve on the board of realtors, and you'll find out more about that. Because all of these agents talk about that all the time.
Yeah. And that one and I'm gonna call your broker.
I'm going to call you broker.
I love it when they say that.
Well, guys, we had another great sales meeting, and because it's Groundhog's Day, we're going to have this sales meeting loop for the next 6 hours. So feel free to just
we
keep
were waiting
going.
for the
I'm
timing.
getting there. Hold on.
It take forever.
Tony, post it?
Go ahead. You
Somebody won
announce it.
$200.
Who won $200? Put it up there. Put it up there, Mr. Producer.
Yay.
Jamie won
How'd you
$200.
get
$200 to
$200.
Fleming's gift card. Feel free to take any one of us.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that-
Yes,
I think you should take your office broker to.
Thank you, Shelley.
Yes.
Shelley, so thank you very much.
Office.
You're
Very
welcome.
polite.
Congratulations. I'm available on Friday at 5 o'clock.
And her husband won't be around.
It goes a lot further at happy hour.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much. Make it a great week, and we appreciate you. And let us know if you need anything. We're here to support.
Bye.